Okay, we are live at the Blairs Bootcamp youth panel, and I'm with Nick Cadott, Brock McGregor, Melissa Harrigan, Gordon Thomas, and Joey Seipels, all from different wards except for Brock and Gordon are from Ward 6. And we got Nick from Ward 5, Melissa from Ward 1, and Ward 4.
Yep.
So we are well represented. We're going to talk about a lot of youth stuff, but stay tuned after for the 7 p.m. Dennings Mayoral Roundtable, where there's going to be some great discussion with Mayor Randy Hope, with candidates Allison Story and Darren Caniff. And we're live, so I can mess up like that. And here we go. So we're going to just get started. What do you guys want to talk about? Let's talk about youth retention. Everybody talks about how do we keep the youth here? They keep on going away, get good jobs, but they never come back until they're older and retired. What can we do to keep the youth back here now? Let's start with Joey Seipels.
There is a lot of jobs that, sorry.
Joey has a cold, just getting
a
over
really
it.
bad cold, and I have laryngitis, so bear with me. A lot of the youth that I'm talking to, what's tough is we don't have a university. We do have a college. They move away. They like what the amenities that are available at these universities in the larger cities and larger centers. And they don't want to come back. They feel that there's not enough here to come back. We do need more jobs, but there are a lot of jobs available. There's a lot of skilled jobs that are unfilled. So we need to have more amenities for these kids. We have amazing beaches, we have amazing downtowns, but I think we can do a lot more. So one of the things that I mentioned was coming up with parks, recreation, and a sports tourism committee. So there'll be some council members, members of the public, and we need to find a way to better utilize the assets that we do have. We have a lot of potential, and when people come down here to see it, they kind of see it. But I think by having a committee, we can better utilize it. That's one of my thoughts.
Anyone want to jump on that?
Yeah, so I can jump on it because my story with Chatham-Kent is I was born and raised here in the municipality and then went away exactly for that reason, Ben, for school. We got married. We wanted to get some experience and more education. So we lived outside of southwestern Ontario for a number of years. And it wasn't until we started, having kids and thinking about family that we started to turn our eyes back to Chatham-Kent. And we often say that it was family and our desire to live small town that made us look to Chatham-Kent. What enabled us to come back, though, was jobs. So there are two things there that I think council needs to do. They need to make decisions thinking about families at all ages and stages, because people can be bringing with them parents and grandparents when they're looking at job opportunities. And then we have to be constantly thinking about job opportunities and economic growth in sectors that are growing in the future, that the young kids now are going to school for. So things like the science, technology, engineering, and math, like that needs to be a bit of our shift in focus, so that we can build those jobs that are desirable for people to come back to. Because it's one thing to want to return to Chatham-Kent, and it's another thing to be able to return to Chatham-Kent.
One thing that when I was out door knocking, somebody brought up, and we seem to focus on return to Chatham-Kent. We want everybody to return, which is great, but why aren't we trying to recruit other youth from other areas with different life experiences, different skill sets, different outlooks on life? Why are we always focused on bringing back the same people that were once here? Let them go explore. Let's bring in some other new candidates and make them cherish Chatham-Kent as much as we did because we grew up here. I think the focus is too much on just bringing back what we had. We want them all to come back and help to make this city great.
I think Nick brings up a good point. So I moved to Chatham-Kent about 11 years ago. I grew up in Cambridge, lived in Bluevale, Ontario, and went to university up in Sudbury. My wife is from the Wallaceburg area. She told me that she lived in Wallaceburg. I stared at her with a blank face, had no idea what she was talking about. Came down here, immediately fell in love with the area. After we graduated, we decided that this is where we wanted to start our roots. But as Melissa mentioned, you need a job. So I was fortunate to be able to find something in my field in finance and be able to start my career. So when I started talking to my buddies that, hey, I'm moving down to the Wallaceburg area, they started laughing at me. Oh, okay, so you're just going to live on a farm type thing? I'm like, there's actually quite a bit here. So I think we need to do more marketing. People don't really realize what we actually have here. So when I bring my buddies down here and they see this is the type of house you can get. We have very low cost of living. Yeah, our taxes are, property tax is a little bit high, but we have so much to offer here. But I agree, we need to market it to a lot of these younger people. I don't know if it's videos or I don't know what the answer is off the top of my head, but I think we need to do a better job marketing.
Yeah, and I think that everyone's kind of hit on it, that there's different factors. Sorry, I was table tapping that that draw you back, and then there's different factors that are barriers for some people. So when we're looking at attraction and retention, Nick's right. It's not just about people that are from here. Obviously, a strong full pullback is family, so that's a great asset that we have here. We have people that are connected to family that do look for that opportunity to move back. But what really draws people back is job opportunities. So when there's an opportunity for a job and you get that job, the next thing we have to look at is what is the barrier? Why might someone say, actually, you know what, I don't want to go there, I want to pursue an opportunity somewhere else? And that's really important from an economic perspective. You talk to employers right now, unemployment is low. They're looking for employees, they're looking for skilled labor, and part of our attraction and retention is to help those businesses, to make this a viable community for them to continue to operate in. So when we look at those barriers to coming back, I think Joey hit on it, that sometimes it's amenities. People think, I was used to living in Guelph when I was in university or Toronto, and we had these things to do outside of work life. There was green spaces, there's activities to do. Part of it is making sure that we're supporting those functions, that we're supporting individuals and organizations that do that type of work in the community, and making sure that we're investing appropriately in the infrastructure that you need to do those things. Yeah. So, we talk about infrastructure all the time, and usually when we talk about that, we think about roads and bridges and culverts, which we've got a lot of. Mm-hmm. But I think we need to remember that infrastructure, that category expands to every built space. So when we talk about an infrastructure gap or our requirements for infrastructure renewal, we have to talk about green spaces and recreational centers and community hubs. So we have to look at those as necessities and not just as they're sometimes called soft infrastructure. So I think that we definitely need to have appropriate investment so we're removing those barriers.
And I think ultimately that, we make those decisions to make vibrant communities, to build out jobs and growth. We might do it motivated by growing the tax base or growing our population, but the number one benefactor are the people who are living here right now as well, absolutely. Right? So it benefits everybody. Mm-hmm. So if you're investing in those vibrant communities, if you're supporting your small business on your main streets, and if you're, creating a community that other people are saying, wow, I want to live there, then obviously the people who live there are proud to be in that community space, right? And that, again, relates to the small town community plans.
I do want to add one other thing. So I think I agree with everything that we've been saying right now. The one thing that I think we might want to also add to that is when we talk about retention, right now we're just talking about that group of youth who are leaving for reasons that, they're going to go out, they're going to explore, they're going to try new things, and then hopefully we bring them back. We're working under the assumption that that's everybody leaving. So I do think that there is a portion of youth who are leaving for reasons that we can change. Like there are factors that are going to be in our control and factors that are out of our control. Factors that are out of our control are things like I want to go explore, I want to go try new things, I want to move around, I want to, do something different. I need a change of scenery. Totally okay, fantastic. There's a great place for you to come back to once you've gone off, you've explored, and you want to settle down. Same thing that you were saying, Melissa. I absolutely agree with that. But there's another group, I think, and that group is leaving not to go explore or do something else, but they're leaving because there's something going on in Chatham that they just don't want to be a part of anymore. And that we need to get really clear on what those are, what those factors are, because those are things that we can change, I think. And start working on those as well.
And as a shameless plug for that, I think having youth on council does help.
Yeah.
Everyone keeps on saying that we're youth. I'm 35 years old, but I'm 35 years old. If you do the math of when you get these 25 and 30-year counselors, they started at the ages we are. So it's not that we're too young for this job. We are ready for this job, and we just need to prove to the people out there that we can. And I think if we're going to have to go after that demographic, then having some youth around that horseshoe would be a very good aspect.
And I think to Gordon's point, and in agreement with Nick, is part of that is recognizing youth voice in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So we had that CK to the Power Y survey run through the municipality, and the answers were very clear that individuals under 35 didn't think they were valued within the community and didn't think their voices were considered in decision making in the community. So out of that, we've started the Seagate to the Power Y Advisory Committee. So that's a committee that's accepting applications and is going to be comprised of individuals from 14 to 39 years old to do just what we're talking about, to add some of that youth voice.
Yeah.
Maybe it won't be people that are, ready to take that step and be on council, have that type of input, but it is meant to capture that, exactly what Gordon's saying. What is it in our community that we need to focus on, that we need to change, and that we need to address to make sure we're not putting barriers up to people coming back, make sure we're not pushing people out and
Yes.
making them leave,
Yeah.
and for new people looking at a place to call home, it appears and is an accepting community for them to be part of.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge for the next council is going to be to hear those voices, not just on the youth committee, but on all of the committees where we have citizen volunteers and people who are spending their time giving their input and giving their expertise and taking that advice and implementing on it, right? Because I think that's an opportunity for our council to improve on, is to hear those recommendations that people are giving from their communities, from their standpoints, from their backgrounds, and from their their current state in life, which in the youth committee would be young people, and to really act on them, right? And to really take those opinions as being valued and as being reasonable and as being representative of the communities that those people are from.
And just because we are in the youth category, we don't just run on issues that are youth related. That's another concern that I've gotten out when I'm knocking on the door. Oh, you're only caring about your demographic. I care about my parents' demographic. I care about a lot of programs that I'll never play an instrument in my life, and that's fine, but I support that culture, and I support a lot of things that have nothing to do with me personally, and that's our role as a counselor, is not to just pigeonhole us to the youth category.
Yep.
And I think that off that point, an important thing to think about when you're on council, running for council, is that you're representing one ward, but that same demographic variety has to exist, in your opinion, between the wards. So when you're at that table every night, there's not things coming to the table that are necessarily directly beneficial to the locality that you're representing. It can be for anywhere in the community, and we have to do a better job at recognizing the benefit to that. So an improvement in Wallaceburg is an improvement in Chatham-Kent. So we should look at the opportunities to do that, celebrate them, and look at it as a win. And we need to start breaking down those barriers between some of the wards.
100%.
I don't think they exist normally between the average Joe. I think sometimes they exist for some political advantage, and you see people take advantage of that. And I think we have the opportunity to say, you know what, we don't need to do that. We're going to change, and we're going to recognize that while there's discrete communities within Chatham-Kent that certainly should be recognized, should be celebrated, that we are also one big community, and we should appreciate that, and we should appreciate each other.
Awesome.
Also, I just wanted to add on to what Nick was saying, because I think that's a really good point. If we're trying to build a Chatham-Kent that is for all residents moving forward, if we start building for a specific demographic, it's going to do harm to other groups because it's built around a particular group. So absolutely, if we're going to start initiatives, if we're going to look at ways that we're going to develop, we want to develop in a way that's going to be accessible for seniors just as much as it's going to be accessible for youth. Like, to focus on a particular demographic is to make sure that the municipality is going to be in a place that it cannot adapt to changes, right? So what happens if all of a sudden there's a demographic shift like we're happening right now? Well, we've built up a municipality that's going to serve a particular demographic, and now we can't. Now we're in the hole, and we have to do all this restructuring. If we just get ahead of it, and we're more proactive in our decision making, and we're looking towards all residents, like Nick's pointing out, I think we're going to build a better Chatham-Kent moving forward.
Awesome.
And something for me, I think that's really important and brought to kind of add to your point, is Chatham-Kent is certainly one large community composed of many small parts. And even so, where I am, people think West Kent. Well, there's a number of small communities in West Kent that think that have unique identities and have certain groups and clubs and initiatives that are happening. And something that I think our council needs to do is really get behind those communities and help those communities make their own community plans, so that the people in Wheatley can say, hey, this is us and this is what we're about, and the people in Bothwell can say, yes, and this is Bothwell and these are our goals, and us as a council can say, yes, we want to support all of your community initiatives and all of your community plans, so that for me as somebody who may not be as familiar with what's going on in North Kent, I can say, well, as a counselor, I want to support your community plan and your community goals. So if you're asking for something that's in the community plan, and I know that that's something that's been well thought out and supported and your community's been consulted in it, then I can have confidence to support that as a counselor because there's been that planning and process put into it initially.
Celebrate the uniqueness in each community
While moving forward together.
Moving it as a collaborative Chatham-Kent. That I think that's one of the issues that it has arisen in the time that we've been a municipality, is we haven't celebrated the uniqueness in each one, and we've tried to fight along the way. We need to realize that, yes, that 100 jobs that is coming to Wallaceburg is going to help Chatham.
Yep.
It's going to help Dresden. It's going to help all of us, but we got to celebrate what makes Wallaceburg unique, what makes Dresden unique, and work together and tear down those divides.
And if you do have that connection to the community groups, it gives you the confidence that the decisions that you're making are going to have a meaningful effect because they're connected to the people that it's going to be essentially tailored to work for, right? So I mean, that confidence, if you're just making decisions off of guesses or estimations and you have no connection to the real world effects of what it's going to be, I mean, it's a shot in the dark. So maintaining that kind of connection is, I think, essential.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, then-
go ahead, Brock.
Yeah, and that comes down to community engagement.
Yeah,
And I think that you have to look at those as opportunities. So I think back to the last term of council, and we had, thinking about Wallaceburg again, there was some activity around what was going to be the future of the water treatment plant in Wallaceburg. And obviously that was something very important to a lot of residents in Wallaceburg. And there was a lot of people involved in that decision that, aren't from Wallaceburg, maybe aren't there all the time and might not understand the history behind that decision. So it's important to go out there and do that. So, I went out to community meetings in Wallaceburg, talked to people from Wallaceburg. Those are people that are never going to vote for me, of course. But that's a community decision for them that's really important.
Yeah.
And that's part of that role that you have to remember that when you're doing that job, everyone is someone you're representing. Doesn't matter if they're old enough to vote, if they didn't vote, if they weren't here when they voted, if they're not going to vote for you ever again, they're still someone that's important and you have to value them. So you have to make sure that as part of that system of what we do on a weekly basis, monthly basis, there's an opportunity for engagement outside of our own wards and outside of those distinct little communities.
Absolutely. And you can think of examples, found within the strategic plan. So Chatham-Kent CK 2035 has a goal to improve the health and wellness of our community overall. That's a really great goal to try to achieve. But that could mean different things for different communities. So for people who, for communities that have indoor pools right now, like Wallaceburg and Blenheim, keeping those, those pools supported, even though some of them are school board pools and not, but that could be a priority. Whereas I know out in Wheatley, trails and developing the waterfront to have that recreational space is a priority. And in other areas, like you look at Merlin, paving sidewalks just so people have a safe place to walk to and from the park. To them, that's the priority. So that's another example of how, the community overall has a goal that we're trying to achieve, but for each of those smaller areas, achieving that goal, the path to achieving that goal could be very different. And as a council, we have the challenge of, how do we support it and how do we make it all happen? Because of course, all of the initiatives that we look at doing cost money, like arenas.
Well, I think Brock really hit on something about councillors getting out into different areas. A lot of the door knocking I'm doing, people are upset. They feel that they don't relate to the councillors, that they don't see the councillors. And that's within their own ward. Never mind, you in Wallaceburg or in Dresden. So I think you're right. As a council, you need to do a lot more. So that's why in my area I'm talking about doing town halls, Facebook Live, opening up a lot more dialogue and accountability between council and their members. But then also, that's in your ward. You have to do the same thing in the other wards.
Absolutely.
Hey, Brock, can you take me around Chatham and get a feel for it? Councillors need to
Trust each other.
And get out there and open up. And, part of it is just trying to protect your job and your vote. And, I've been here for 20 years and I have my core set of votes and, but we need to get past that. Otherwise, we're not going to get past this us and them mentality that's within the municipality.
Well, and Joy, I think that communication barrier that you refer to, that's obviously the responsibility of councillors. It's also the responsibility of the municipality as a whole, right? Like improvements to how we communicate with the community via our website, via the information that we're putting out there could improve. That's something that you often hear people in Chatham-Kent say, like, well, I've never even heard of this, or I don't even know where to go on the website to get access to this information, right? A lot of people start with 360 or 1998 and feel like they've been bounced around from department to department. So how can we improve the way that we communicate, not just as councillors with the community, but how can we push administration and challenge them to communicate better with the residents so that our residents across communities are informed?
For sure.
Awesome. Okay, guys, thank you so much for being here. We're not done yet, but I just want to say, when I dreamed up this whole roundtable idea, this discussion, what you guys are doing, is exactly how I pictured it going in my head, with a big crowd and people watching online. So we're going to move on a little bit to we're going to talk about it in the mayoral part, but transportation as it affects youth specifically. Can we talk about that? Because it's a big issue. Transportation as it affects youth.
Sure, and I think that it's a good transition when we're talking about the uniqueness of communities and how assets are arranged within Chatham-Kent, and then talking about transportation. You know, the reality is there's not a covered pool in every community.
Yep.
You know, the arenas are spread out. We're a very large geographic community, and to use all those things that we fund, people need to be able to get around better. It is obviously a challenge to fund and plan out transportation, public transit, that's going to benefit everyone in the community, that's going to look full, that's going to make your use of those tough dollars as best we can. I think we need to continually evaluate what that transportation looks like and rearrange it, and that's working with employers, working with shift times, making sure that we're able to get people out to events. So, you know, rearranging routes around events in the community. And I think it's been a great development that we're open to rideshare now. So I think that there's an opportunity for rideshare to have a big impact on ability of individuals to get around the community. And U-Ride just opened up last week, and that was something we worked on as part of a bylaw before anyone requested it, to say we need to be ready for this change. And frankly, we need this change. You know, we have people that talk about not being able to get around. That's an accessibility issue. That's certainly an age-friendly issue. That's an issue for youth. So someone coming back, starting a job, maybe not being able to afford a car yet, they need to be able to get to work. They need to be able to get to the grocery store. They need to be able to get their kids places. And we need to look at different answers to that problem. So it's not going to be the same it always has been. We're not going to be able to put buses on every street and have them running that frequently. That's just not an affordable solution in a big geography. We need to look at those other opportunities, and I think rideshare is a great way to go, and we need to make sure that we're supporting innovative solutions like that.
I think I definitely agree. The whole transportation system as it is now is going to have to be restructured. But what will bring us exactly back to where we are now is if we don't structure it on the basis of the people who use the actual service.
Absolutely.
So what we do is we come up with a new transportation system that we think is going to be great, roll it out. It's just not going to work because it's not designed around the people who need it. And a second thing that that's come up as I'm knocking on doors is in some of the more rural areas, because I've pointed this out before, where the general trend is that youth across Canada, well, it's actually across North America, are less and less getting driver's licenses.
Yep.
In the rural communities, it's a necessity. The youth are getting driver's licenses, they are driving around, but if we're talking about attracting youth from other places, they're not. They don't have that access. Some are coming from places where the transportation system is all they know. They grew up on it. Myself, I grew up in Toronto, and I grew up on a transportation system.
Yeah.
I have my own beefs with the transportation system there, but it's something that you grow up using, and so you're just under the understanding that a municipality has a transit system that allows you to get from where you live to where you work to where you want to play. So.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know if our current transportation system is targeted towards what I will call young youth, so like teenagers and people looking to do activities and recreation. So even the interurban transit is very much targeted around like an 8 to 4, maybe you need to get into Chatham to work and then come home. I think we can use data and usage rates to better make decisions in that area. Ben, you and I really early on talked about an event bus.
Yes,
and then I
the
thought
event
it
bus.
was interesting that the international plowing match then had a park at the Walmart area and get transited in. And that was a really successful initiative. It helped with parking, but it also would help people that were dependable on transit and needing to get in. So, I think if we looked at the different initiatives that were happening across communities and proactively scheduled interurban transportation to go to the fish festival or the plowing matches or the different cherry fests and things like that, then you would have youth in the community taking huge advantage of that, because not only young people, they in our communities, they often get a driver's license as soon as they can, but they may not have a vehicle and they may have to ask mom and dad to borrow their vehicle, and they probably get no an awful lot. So that could be something that's really enticing, and also solves the problem with our young people saying there's nothing to do here,
Yeah.
right? Because then we're providing them things to do in the municipality, we're giving them transportation to and from, and then also for the people who maybe want to enjoy the beer tents at those small town fairs, then we're giving them transportation to and from, and it's safer for everyone to enjoy.
With us being such a large demographic, we do have to look at a lot of options, offloading some of that to community partners, the ride sharing, those aspects, because we're such a large demographic with small populations throughout it. So we have to look at a lot of different options and use those community partners. I think the ride share is going to be great. I think it's going to be a big economic upspin, because now you can go out and have a couple drinks and go out to dinner and actually get a ride home, where our current taxi situation across Chatham-Kent wasn't the greatest, and people refrained from going out.
Yeah, on the transportation, I 100% agree with the U-Ride. But for the buses, Melissa's right. We need to understand the demographics. If you go online and actually check where the hours are, I don't even know how you could work a job and be able to use the transit. It wouldn't work.
5-hour job.
Yeah, and then to talk about youth, you need to be high tech. That's what cities do. So I was interested on what the hours are. I went on the website, which is a different issue. I think we need to revamp this website.
Absolutely.
But to look at the buses and the scheduling, it's horrible. Like someone who's 21 would just close that. So I think you need to understand who your market is, who your customers are, understand the data, and then tailor your offering to that. Don't just try to push something and hoping that it's embraced. That's the wrong way. You don't build a business like that. You understand your customer, and then you tailor your product to your customer.
Yeah.
And that data is much easier to get now too, right?
Oh, yeah.
We have ride shares going on. There's an opportunity to use that data
sure.
To figure out what patterns are, when people are needing to move. And even you look at an example, much larger example, City of Toronto has a partnership with Waze to figure out some of their traffic issues and appropriately adjust and redesign for on-demand access for their transportation.
And I do agree with what Melissa was saying about it being data-driven and usage-based, but we should be very careful not to use current usage data, because that usage data reflects a system that's not designed around people who actually need to use it. So I absolutely agree that it's got to be data driven, but we got to be very careful, because data is really easy to get misinterpreted, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Everybody throws around statistics, and they mean different things to different people. So as long as we keep it connected back to the people who actually need the services and use the services, then we'll have accurate data that we can use.
We can't alienate the current data either, though. We can't forget about who's actually using it, because it is an aging demographic that are using it, that in their mind it might be perfect right now. We don't want to skew it to a point that it's not accessible for them as well.
Yeah, and I think the argument for that is that you need to make sure you haven't decided on your solution before you address your data.
Exactly.
You have to look at that data to find your solution. And I think you got to make sure, and I can attest we do that at council an awful lot, is we decide what the solution is, and then we go try and find the data to tell us our solution's right. And that's working backwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
A little bit.
But the people who are going to tell you when they want to use the service are the people. You got to have a conversation with people who actually need to use the services that we're trying to offer. That's kind of just what I think.
It's ready, aim, fire, not fire, aim, ready.
Okay, guys, we're going to wrap it up now, but we're going to go 90 seconds for each of you to tell people why they should vote number one, and you can add in why to vote for you. Try to make the vote for you for 30 seconds, and why to vote in general 60 seconds. But I want to thank Blairs Bootcamp, Josh and Nate are over there. I think they're with their father over there. You need community help. You need sponsors to put stuff like this on so you guys can all enjoy it. And I hope you have enjoyed it and learned something about what our candidates 35 and under think. So thank you. And if you guys are watching online, hit that share button for me, please. Okay, let's start with Nick.
I think you need to get out and vote, because there isn't a day that you can't leave your house without something impacting you that the municipality takes care of. So every day today, you need to get out there and vote and let your voice be heard for what you want.
That was quick.
That was good. Said quick.
It's radio guy.
And you want people to vote.
No, I'm going to take their time.
Go ahead, Brock.
So I think that you should look at your vote as an investment. So it's an investment in your time. It's an investment in your energy. And like Nick said, when you go out and you go through your regular day, the level of government that touches you the most often is the municipality. That's a level of government it is often more challenging to be informed about. It's more challenging to engage in. It's not something you see on the news all the time, but it is something that has a significant impact on our lives. So it's something that it's worth that investment. It's worth your time. It's worth your energy, and it's worth your participation. And beyond just voting, you do have an opportunity to be involved outside of your vote. You have the opportunity to be engaged, to give feedback to candidates, to give feedback to elected officials, to give feedback to the municipality, and to be part of that process. I'd encourage anyone that wants to get involved in a campaign if you want to.
Yep.
Go out and knock on some doors with some people, learn more about your neighbors, learn more about your community, and get involved in that situation. It's a great opportunity to learn. It's a great opportunity to discover more about this community and to figure out what's going on, what we need to change, and what's already great about the community. So I'd encourage, if you haven't taken the time yet, take the time, go through some of Ben's videos, go through some of the media that's out there, and figure out what speaks to you and support that.
Well over
Awesome.
90 seconds.
And Joey?
I agree. So I think of voting, your councillors, your mayors work for you. Think of it as a business transaction. You're the employer, the councillor, mayor are your employee. Look at their backgrounds, their experience, and their platforms. If they don't have it, call them, ask them questions, get informed. Don't just rely on someone's last name. If they are a current councillor or a current mayor, look at their record. Did they do what they say that they were going to do? Did they follow through? Did they execute their vision? So that's what my plea is. Just get out, investigate, treat it just like they're your employee, and then hold them accountable. When they come in, call them. When they said that they were going to do something, they didn't do it, just like your employee, you hold them accountable.
Gordon?
I like the way that Brock described it. I would also look at it in terms of an investment, but I also think it's an endorsement. So there's two parts to it. One is the candidates that you're voting for, you're endorsing those people, and it's also an investment in them. And along the lines of what Joey was saying, it's a way for you to hold them accountable. And that's not just about the vote, because you can hold them accountable for the duration of their term. But ultimately, that gives you the final say on how well they performed over those 4 years. So holding them accountable, the ultimate way of doing it is, in the end, that vote, which is why I think it's so important.
Awesome. And before we just wrap up,
Don't forget me.
oh, I'm not going to forget you. Don't worry. Before we wrap up, just know that we got Sodbuster, the beer of the debates here, with some Bayside as well at the bar. And thank you again, Blairs Bootcamp, for putting on this youth panel. And stay tuned for the Dennings Mayoral Roundtable with Darren Caniff, Allison Story, and Randy Hope. I got those quick.
Yeah.
And Melissa, wrap this up for us.
Ladies last, we can do that. So I think, it doesn't matter where you live in Chatham-Kent. Chatham-Kent is your home. And if that's something you're really proud of and you're really happy about your home, then you need to, make that investment and that commitment to your home by voting. And if you're happy with the status quo, then that's great. And if you want to see improvements, then maybe you can think about voting for change in the area. But either way, whatever your position is, I think all together, everybody's goal is to improve the direction that we're going in Chatham-Kent and improve the place that we call home. So voting is the best way that you can do that. And I think not only, if you're watching or if you're here tonight, it's not just about your vote, it's about the vote of everyone around you as well. Yeah. So encourage people around you to vote. If you're an employee, if you're an employer, tell your employees to get out and vote. And if you're a parent with voting age children, tell them to go and get out and vote, because I think, there's a lot of good opportunity and there's a huge appetite for us to improve the community that we live in and to improve our home overall. And voting is the first and best way that you can do that in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. So stay tuned. The Universe featuring Ray is coming on in a couple seconds for a little break. So enjoy that music, and we will be back with the Dennings Mayoral Roundtable in about 10 minutes. Thank you, and share.
You guys good? Right on. All right. Embarrassment, no sense of embarrassment. wish me well, wish me well. And how backwards is the world where happy people have no place to play. The playground is for all of us. Won't you share the pain, and we can build this together. When we build our castle in the sand, we can spend well, and we can live there together. Oh, 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 yeah, yeah. Well, I turn off the TV and I go outside. I make up my own show and it plays all the time, all the time. And when I see a stranger ray walk by and give you a high five, it's okay to pass me by because I'm living another life, another life. Sometimes you may feel like you have no place to play. Say we're living and that's okay. You will see better days. And if your girlfriend gonna down you, it's gonna get back to you. There's so many fishes in the sea. I don't know where to swim. Playground is for all of us. Share the pain, and we can live this together. When we build our castle in the sand, and we can live there together, together, yeah, yeah, together. 2030 become something so foreign to us. It is where we're born, it is where we turn to dust. 2030 become something so foreign to us. It is where we're born, it is where we turn to dust. Since when did dirt become something so foreign to us? It is where we're born, it is where we turn to dust. It's for all of us. Share the pain, and we can build this together. When we build our castle in the sand, we can spread the wealth, and we can live there together, together, yeah, yeah, together, together, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Hope y'all are having fun at home. Pick my brain, I see what you find. Some bugs are getting pickled in the back of my mind, and the surface says a ring, so I'm making my own way. Pick my poison, look what I found. I'm turning my frown upside down. Got some things to iron out, so I'm saying me on my. I did some things I'd never do, but I just blamed it on the booze. Oh no. Took my top off and lost my shoes. Celebrity blow. Adios. Well, I made a few mistakes. can't recall, can't remember. I hit my head last September. Gonna need my mother's way down the road. Guardian high test, he gave them to me. Said keep them at close when you need them most. You never really know when you're close to broken. Said hey, well I made the same mistakes. I relate to what your face is. And I meet you halfway, meet you halfway, meet you halfway there. Halfway there, halfway there, halfway there, halfway. Ba 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 ba, ba 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 ba, ba 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 I made a few mistakes, and I thank you for your patience. But if it's all too hard to take, well, you don't know what you're missing. But if you have some signs of ways, meet me backstage, 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 yeah, backstage, yeah, backstage, yeah, backstage, yeah, backstage. Ba 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 ba, ba 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 ba, ba 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 ba. Sounds called Scatterbrain. I'm always there, just as the moments pass. Forgive my head if it was hypnotized. Apologetically, I say it's just my style. Don't wait around, cause I'ma be a while. And I'll take my time till I'm dead and gone. If you read the sign, it says I won't be long. My intention's good, swear I'm innocent. It's not up to me. It's part of my identity. I'm desperate, I'm always late. Rushing around, forgot my papers. Desperate, I'm always late. Rushing around, forgot my papers. Desperate, they call me Scatterbrain. Sorry, survive until you're mine. I'm desperate, I'm always late. I'll hand it in after the pain is due. So I stay up all night to write a no excuse. Try to be on time, I even never had. Then I hit the snooze and choose to sleep instead. I procrastinate till I'm overwhelmed, and I can't commit because I'm scared to say I got problems, but I'm over
Hey, thank you very much for coming back to the Dennings Mayoral Roundtable. And we are going to start out by just thanking everybody that's here. Thank you for watching, engaging, having conversations online, and hitting that share button. Greatly appreciated. And get out and vote. Online voting is until October 15th, and then the polls are October 22nd. So get out and vote. Do that. That would be great. Okay? And do it after you learn a little bit more about the candidates right here, though. So we're going to start out with a little bit of questions about, who they are, what they want to do, and why you should vote for them. We're going to do a 2-minute thing there. Then we're going to get into general discussion. So we're going to start off with the current mayor, Randy Hope. Just give us an introduction.
Well, first of all, Ben, to you, thank you very much for putting this on. It's great that we're having an opportunity to discuss these issues. I think they're important for the general public to understand where we've been, but most importantly is where we're going. Let me just give a little bit of education about who I am. I worked in the factory, worked in Arvin Meritor for 30 years. At that time it was known as Rockwell International. It was one of the factories that closed. I spent 30 years there. During that period of time I had leave of absence and I went and served in the provincial government from 1990 to 95. In 2006, I decided it was time that I re-entered back into politics, and I'm serving now as the mayor for the last 12 years. A little bit about, what we've gone through. I've learned about social justice. I've learned about a balancing of business. I've learned about a number of things. I never learned it in a classroom. I actually learned it on the ground, working each day with people, whether it was through collective agreements or whether it was through just dealing with, as being the mayor, trying to balance the community, trying to make sure that we do the right thing. The nice part over the 12 years is we've went through some pretty tough times at one time. We had a high unemployment rate, walked into a debt level of $164 million, and now we're down, we've taken about $90 million off that debt. The other thing, we had a lot of empty factories around this community, and now all of our factories are full with employment opportunities that are available in them. Now we run into a problem where we don't have any, and companies need to build. The other part is that, we try to build a community that was resilient and would be able to hold the economic situations that are upon it. That's why diversity is so important in what we're trying to do. We're working with our post-secondary education partners, with the community college and with the University of Guelph Ridgetown campus on the agriculture, because both the technology side of it and both the agricultural side are key components to this community. And it's true, when you look at, you only got 43 people per square kilometer, it tells you got a lot of land around here that's used for agriculture. But we've gone through a lot of tough challenges. We're making progress. We're on the right track. We're moving in the right direction. We're getting our financial house in order. We're improving the services. I even heard about the website today. I remember when I first got elected, that website was totally deplorable. It's getting better, but it always needs to be improved because that's the changing of times. The technology changes and we need to change. So when I look at, why am I running? I'm running to continue the movement that we need to be. And, the experience I carry, both from my labor days, my days as the provincial member, but also my days as the mayor, is helping this community get to where it needs to. And by support of the general public is, where you do it. You're never going to do it alone. Support of council, support of the general public, and making the changes needed in order to thrive and strive through the changes in the future.
Awesome. Allison?
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight. I hope you can all hear me relatively well in the back. I'll try and emote but not shout to make our folks at home a little more shocked. But my name's Allison Story. I was born and raised in Chatham-Kent. In Chatham primarily, but also was fortunate enough to have a family cottage in Rondo, so I spent a lot of my time in South Kent as well. I went to high school here. My family is here. I went to Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, and then I went to work at Queen's Park for the provincial government for several years. So I traveled around the province learning about different issues facing them. After that, I worked for the Department of Foreign Affairs for the federal government, where I lived and worked overseas in Italy for several years, which was wonderful. And I got to see a lot of the issues facing the economy and how you use arts and culture as well as culinary tourism, quality of life, how that really affects and attracts young professionals. While I was in Toronto, I was part of a group called Canada 25, which was a policy think tank group that focused on issues facing cities, primarily Canadian cities, and attracting and retaining young professionals. I was part of a large group of young professionals in Toronto that wrote a large position paper that was submitted to the federal government about retention and attraction of young professionals. So I feel very strongly about that, and I'm looking forward to bringing those recommendations to Chatham-Kent. Following that, I moved back to Chatham, where I've been ever since. I work for RM Auctions, which is a fairly well-known, successful entrepreneur who's done an amazing job from a small business to a global corporation that's successful around the world. I was lucky enough to be a communications specialist with them, traveling the world with their auctions. Then my dream job came up at the municipality of Chatham-Kent, where I was the manager of culture and special events, where I was there for almost a decade and learned all the ins and outs of day-to-day municipal operations, so I feel very comfortable and confident in how that works. Unfortunately, shortly after end of 2014, my department was eliminated, so I moved on and started my own business, provided communication consulting services. Then I moved on to the Chatham-Kent Hospice, where I provided those same services for about a year and a half, and I just finished there recently. That was a very rewarding opportunity. Personally, I'm a past president of the Rotary Club of Chatham, and through that, I've worked with communities across Chatham-Kent regularly with the other Rotary clubs. We've done projects both locally, like working together to raise over $250,000 for the hospice, and also globally providing disaster relief for different communities around the world. When I decided to run for mayor, I realized there was issues that were facing this community that I didn't feel were being addressed. Primarily two major reports from Stats Canada, which is the major reporting body for demographics in this country. The first being the last two census from 2006 to 2016, we lost 8,500 private sector jobs. And we also went from 110,000 to 101,000 in our population. Those are two red flags to me that I'm very concerned about. So I developed a detailed platform in consultation with the community. I spoke to literally hundreds to 1,000 people online and in person to gather their feedback. That informed my platform at itsTime4CK.com, and I would love to hear your feedback on that if you have time. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so Randy and Allison maxed out the 2 minutes there.
Okay, so
That's right.
So go for it.
so to clarify, we are going to be talking about resume and stuff.
We are going to get to that after.
So I won't
yes.
get any of that in the opening speech. I guess the first thing is I'm really disappointed that I'm not anymore able to participate in the youth council. I keep thinking of myself as youthful, but obviously wasn't invited to the under 35. So
Yeah.
trying to come to that reality. What I thought was really good about that, these 6 youth sat up here and they came up with some great ideas. As they went through all those points, I'm thinking, yes. Collectively, they solved a lot of problems, a lot of issues just talking right up here. That is what collaboration can do. Those 6 individuals, if we can get council working together, if we can get the community working together, imagine what we can do. So I just want to go quickly, born and raised in CK. I got 4 children. And we started having kids. I moved away, go to school, and I said, I'm never coming back to Chatham. Never, ever, ever. We left for a number of years, decided coming back. The best thing I ever did was coming back. My wife and I, ecstatic. Chatham-Kent is an amazing place. It really takes a community to raise a child. That's what we learned. Chatham-Kent is an amazing place to raise kids. And I think that's one of the main reasons people come back. They realize, okay, I'm in the big city somewhere, but when it comes to family, you cannot replace that. That's one big thing put here. I'm excited about the future of Chatham-Kent, but we need to do it right. We need to make the right decisions. We need to guide ourselves. We need to think to the future. So that's what you're going to do tonight. You are electing the CEO of the corporation of the municipality of Chatham-Kent with your vote. You need to look at past experience, because the past experience is exactly what you're going to get in the future. That's a great indicator of everything you've done in the past is going to happen in the future. So I encourage you to be informed. It's fantastic tonight. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, group, for doing this. This is unprecedented in Chatham-Kent. I've been having so many people come up saying how informed they feel now with what's going on here. I don't think ever the people knew as much as they did about the candidates. So I encourage you to go out and do your hours worth of research and be informed. Talk to people. Get out and say, have you had interactions with them? Have you dealt with them before? What are they like? I encourage you to do all that. So thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the resume. Okay, so anybody that goes to find a job, a minimum wage job, a good job, any job, they have to put in a resume. It usually has, the overall thing, the overview of yourself. It has your work experience and your work history. So that's what I want to know. That's what people want to know, and how that will apply to being the mayor one day. So we're going to go with Allison. We're going to start with you because we started with Randy first. Let's go with work history, work experience, and how that helps you become the mayor and be the mayor.
Absolutely. Well, I think I touched on most of my work experience in my opening remarks, but I think my background and expertise really fits well with the direction we need to take our community now. I've got a lot of experience, both formally and informally, working on issues that face young professionals and how to retain and attract young professionals to our community. And I agree with Darren, the discussion earlier tonight was fantastic. I'd love to work with any of those counselors if they were elected and I were elected. We've got a great roster of that demographic putting their name forward for council, so I appreciate that very much. My experience in the public sector with working for the province and the feds has resulted in a very extensive network of contacts in the provincial and federal government, as well as my work on the 401 median barrier campaign, where I helped achieve a commitment to build a concrete median barrier on the 401, which we have been asking for this community and others in the region for close to 20 years, and I helped secure that commitment working with our local MPPs and our provincial counterparts. So my extensive network of contacts with the provincial and federal government, I know will serve us very well, because most people in this room likely know that almost every service we provide municipally filters down from the province one way or the other. Most of our services are mandated by the province. A lot of our funding comes from the province, and you need to have a constructive and productive and respectful relationship with your provincial counterparts. If you do not have that, you will miss out on advocacy opportunities, partnership opportunities, and funding opportunities. I have that already established. I'm ready to hit the ground running on day one to work with that as well. My private sector experience is quite extensive as well, working with RM Auctions, which was a global success story, which I'm so thrilled is in Chatham-Kent. But I also grew up in a small business household. My dad runs a small business, has for 40 years, so I know what that's like. And one of my primary pillars of my Transformation CK platform is focusing solely on local business development and encouraging regional development to feed into that. So I feel like my professional experience feeds in well to what we need right now. We need to focus on our local businesses, and I have the connections both provincially and locally to continue doing that.
Darren.
Thanks. I've got my resume. I'm going to go into a little more detail some of the roles and responsibilities that I had. Not extensively, but it's important that no matter where you work, what have you did? What did you do during that time frame? What were your responsibilities to build up to that? So I guess we're breaking in three categories. Education. So the first thing is a business degree from Wilfrid Laurier University. Graduate soon afterwards, I got my chartered accountant degree. So the last 30 years, I've been a chartered accountant, and throughout my business experience, had that. The third thing is chartered director's designation. What is that? I got that from McMaster University. It's an 18-month course on governance. So you're drilled in, and you have an exam at the end to talk all about governance and what it means, the best practices in governance. So I'll get into my paid position. So I worked at KPMG for 5 years. I left there as a tax manager. Then I went to Union Gas I was over there for 20 years plus. Some of the roles I did was Director of Strategic Development, Director of Planning and Forecasting. So what I did there, I managed their whole budget process. So it's over $1 billion budget. They spend $300 or $400 million a year in capital. Oversaw that. Oversaw the business plans for all that capital they're spending. Helped recognize it, various issues with it. Helped recommend better ways to do things there. So then as well, I was chair of the board of Integris. Before becoming councillor, I was chair of the board for 3 years or so. I'm the current chair of the board of Main Street Credit Union. That credit union is almost $700 million in assets. So through the ranks, I've joined both of those boards, starting as a board member, moved my way up to become the chair. Currently, as well, councillor. It's an invaluable experience, the councillor. The 4 years, you learn a lot of things. You learn what things to do, how to get it done. Currently, I'm chartered or the CFO with Transform. So what all that career has done is given me ability for fiscal responsibility, to look at return on investment. We need to be looking at that lens all the time with return on investment, understanding business. I understand that when I talk to business owners, I can relate to that. Governance, like a lot of governance experience, and process improvements. All through my career, we've dealt with process improvements. How do we take a process that's broken and fix it? I'll get in kind of the volunteer side of things. Initiate a number of things. I won't, Positivity Day, Festival of Giving, Amazing Race, Decathlon, Children's Concert Series. All those were brand new. Those are ideas that came up. So what it did was creativity, various things like that. I also recently co-chaired the International Plowing Match. What an amazing event for the community, 1,000 volunteers coming together. I'm also the current chair of the Prosperity Roundtable. So what have those things done? They've driven creativity, teamwork, leadership, creative thinking, new ideas. That's what all those things, based on my history, I can bring to the table. All those points I've highlighted will make me a very good mayor. Thank you.
Randy.
Wow, I got to go back further because I'm a little bit older. Let's see, in education, I got a high school education in Tilbury High. I went to high school, worked in a factory for a number of years, got my labor education, taught labor history and labor economics, then got elected provincially. Learned a lot because I was actually responsible for the second largest financial budget in the province of Ontario, which was the Ministry of Community and Social Services, what had everything put into it. And then I also, sit on a number of board of directors that I've been involved with. Integris, I'm the head of the power lines. Let's see, the chair of the PUC, all the things that are in the police services board for the last 12 years. But also outside of that, let's take outside of the municipality. For instance, the chair of the Western Wardens. All the wardens in the region all come together, elected me the chair, not just 1 year term, but a 2-year term. During that time, we were able to get money for gas, natural gas systems. We were able to get the fiber, $163 million from each government, federal and provincial government. I've also presented before Senate committees in the House of Commons. I've also presented provincial governments committees, but I also sat on those committees too when I was in Queen's Park. When you look at education, I was honored by the St. Clair College here with the honorary business degree and also international business administration and international business. It was a fate that I never had a chance because unfortunately when I was younger, father died when I was 15. My mother was a domestic engineer and everybody had to pitch in to pay the bills back then. So I don't regret because what I did is I got my education on the ground, working with people, understanding the issues. Labor negotiations, I traveled quite a bit extensively around Canada negotiating labor contracts. Negotiated labor contracts in, my own plants. But, the important thing around education is you can learn anything you want from a textbook, but it's a practical experience that you need in order to make things work. And I've demonstrated that because when I took the role on as mayor, I'm sitting chairing organizations. I'm chairing and sitting in front of special task force groups by AMO. I sat on the board of directors of AMO. I sit with the large urban mayors. I sit with the regional mayors. I sit with the local mayors in the region here tackling bigger issues about communities of common interest. I sit internationally in the U.S. Presenting to the U.S. Congress on the issue of the Great Lake Basin. I've sat with the mayor of Chicago, the mayor of Racine, Wisconsin, the mayor of Cleveland on issues that affect our Great Lake Basin. So when you talk about education, education is not just what you learn in the textbook, but also the practical experience you bring to a table so they can speak the language that they can. I can speak the language in a boardroom or I can speak the language down here. It doesn't matter what the portfolios are that people are carrying. It's about your ability to speak to people. And I've been able to do that for years. I've had the teaching that I needed to. And the most important thing is to carry that education forward, to bringing and growing a better community. I've learned what it's like to be on unemployment lines. I've learned what it's like to be on a strike line. I learned what it was like to actually, if you had enough money to make the next payment for your mortgage. I've been there and done it. But the thing is, those things never leave you because that's who you represent to make sure that people are able to make the payments that are required in order so they can enjoy the quality of life we have here. That's important education that you're not going to get from a textbook.
Awesome. Okay, thank you guys for being here. We're going to get into the discussion part, and emergency medical services are a big concern locally here. I hear it, I get a ton of private messages about the concern that there's not enough, that they're just not, I want you guys to discuss this. We'll start with Darren. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, it is certainly a very important issue. because I expect in my lifetime to need it myself or my family members. So I want it to be there when I need it, when my family needs it. I want it to be there for when everybody else in Chatham-Kent needs it. The key to this and every other decision is education knowledge. The councillors have to be educated. The mayor has to understand the issues. So to reach out and make sure you do that. But it involves teamwork, like we saw with the youth council. They all sat around, had their own ideas, and collectively, you took notes and minutes on what they just said, you could come up with a pretty good solution on that. The same thing with EMS. You sit down with the people that are knowledgeable and say, here's the issues they're dealing with. We rely on those experts. We're going to come up with some pretty good solutions. So as I see it, the issues are, first and foremost, we got stress in the paramedics. That they're dealing with each and every day. They deal with a lot of things that I couldn't deal with one single incident. They deal with 10 of them a day. So we need to deal with that stress, and how do we deal with that? Response times. We're all concerned with that. When you're in a serious situation, you want the ambulance there immediately. Third thing is obviously we have to balance the costs. To say, if we put 10 more ambulances out there, it'd be tough to go raise the taxes. So there's that balance, but we need to look at that. So some of the solutions that I would suggest, first and foremost, is we need to form an EMS committee. Similar to the police board, we need a group of experts, people that are doing it, coming together and saying, recommending this is what we need. So council, they're not the experts, but they can look to that committee and consider that and look at their recommendations. We need to provide additional resources. Right now, our response times are lower than a lot of other communities. We need to look at putting resources in. Now, there's also ways we can start looking at doing it better, and the experts will be able to tell you a lot of ways. A few things I look at is we need to work with hospitals to minimize time the ambulance sits there. So they show up with an emergency patient, and if they could offload much quicker, but sometimes they'll sit in the hospital for an hour, hour and a half, which takes that ambulance off the road. Is there ways we can work with there? We need to ensure proper billings between communities. As it stands now, ambulances are dispatched by the province, and we could have an ambulance in Tilbury and it's dispatched to another county, municipality. We need to work on that so that if we're sending more ambulances to other communities, they're paying for it, or vice versa. So it's balanced, so we're become more indifferent to that. The last thing is transferring of patients. A lot of times you'll have an ambulance show up at the hospital and transfer a patient from here to Windsor, here to London. Are there other ways to do that so we can keep the ambulances for true emergencies versus transportation? Those are a few things, but I look at the experts to be able to get together on that committee to come up with those ideas to make it a better system.
Well, Benny, I'd just like to say, everybody talks about when you deal with an important service like EMS, fire, and police, why are you putting it into a third-person contract relationships? These are important services. EMS should be back in the house where it belongs with the municipality. It's great to have a committee. I've seen stuff, you don't want to do stuff, send it to committee, because that's where it doesn't get anything done. But I think with the EMS services, I said it before we went out to this contract, and unfortunately it takes enough votes to carry that through. EMS services need to be brought back in the house, controlling the costs, making sure where they go. Because if it's back in house, we need to talk to the province about the dispatching. We need to talk with the hospitals about, as Darren indicated, about how many times you see 3 or 4 ambulances sitting in the back of the emergency room waiting to unload. I think it was today I seen 3 ambulances sitting in the back of the emergency department waiting to unload patients. We need to make sure that, number one, the control is back in where it should be. If I'm going to get yelled at by people that services ain't there, I don't want to have to go to a third person who's got to go to the labor force to say, well, we got to try and work it out, and we sit back while they try to figure things out. Let's put the responsibility back where it should be. Let's put it back in-house. Let's start dealing it. Then you can make sure that you're putting things in place, making sure you have an action plan, making sure you're talking to the province, making sure that the community that you represent is being safe and provided the proper care services. I'm seeing other communities. I talked to a number of the other mayors in the area. They all run their own services. One of the people always fear, well, we're going to have to labor negotiations and everything's arbitration. The thing is, you can sit down and have a civil discussion with labor people and actually work out collective agreements because they live here too. And they want to make sure that the services that they're providing to their neighbor or their cousin or their nephew or whoever it is adequate and affordable. Nobody wants to drive themselves out of business. But I think if we're sitting there talking about emergency services, we went through it. We're talked about a 3-year contract. Next thing you know, a motion comes, we extended it by 2 years. We lose control over making sure that the adequate services that are there. We pay for a contract. Anything outside that contract, making modifications and changes don't always work. So when I'm hearing about EMS, I think it needs to be brought back in-house. I think there needs to be a structure in place similar to the Police Services Board that makes sure that you can make appropriate changes to deal with the needs in the crisis situations that occur. But also from there, you're now going to the province, and you're talking to the province, you're talking to the healthcare providers, and you're looking at preventative medicine opportunities that are going to benefit the community. Remember, 43 people per square kilometer, that's a lot of geographic area you have to cover. We've got to make sure that we're there on time in dealing with the crisis issues that apply to us.
I would add on to that, pardon me. I would add on to that only because I think I've spoken with a lot of EMS or service people during this campaign. I was at the Tilbury base just this morning talking to the team there, and I feel that I agree with the issues that Darren and Randy both raised. I think that the issues facing our EMS personnel are well known and we need to address them. But I think there are 3 additional concerns that we need to make clear during these discussions, and that's transparency, accountability, and communication. I believe those were lacking in the discussions and the negotiations during the last round that went to council. I've heard that numerous times from numerous different people who were involved in that. Those are key pillars of my platform that I released several months ago. We had virtually none of this. We need to have, if we're going to have a fulsome discussion and get the right option at the table, we need to have transparency, accountability, and communication. We have a situation where not everyone was at the table. We had a situation where private citizens had to actually file FOIs to get information they needed to make sure the taxpayer was being served effectively. So I am absolutely dedicated to transparency, accountability, and communication, not just on this, but on any issue. But EMS and our emergency services is such a crucial part because we have such a large community geographically. It's a major concern. We are very unique in our needs, and we need a unique solution that is made in Chatham-Kent. The health and safety of first responders, personally, I take strong priority and strong interest in, even before I was a candidate for mayor, due to my interest in the 401 median barrier, and I would continue to do that. But transparency and accountability and communication have to be front and center in any discussion about EMS services.
I just want to add to that, as far as forming a committee, we want a committee that has teeth. We don't want, I agree that there's some committees out there that, okay, yeah, you put there and you talk and we're not going to listen. This needs to be like the Police Service Board. The Police Service Board is respected, listened to, they cover off the services. We need to have a committee that has teeth. It drives transparency, drives communication. And if they recommend to bring it back in, which I agree that, yes, we should be looking at that, because virtually every other community in the province has them directly employed within the municipality, not a third-party contract. So if this committee gets together and says, you know what, the best option to provide service to Chatham-Kent is to bring it back in, well, then we should do that. But
Well,
I want the experts to be able to.
But the thing is, Darren, okay, we say that, but we have a third person providing this service. Don't you think they're making a profit?
Yes,
We can take that profit, put it into putting in the ambulance instead of putting into because we're taking responsibility for doing the work. And that's where I have a hard time when I listen to council. What I heard, the biggest issue was, we don't want a labor negotiation because it's arbitration. That's what I hear. If we really are serious about emergency services and we're really serious about making sure that patient care is a priority, we establish it back in-house, we work in collaboration with the hospital to cut down the amount of time that they're sitting in the parking garage waiting for it to unload, and we make sure that we have a dialogue with the province who does the dispatching. When we went to the province to bring that dispatching back in-house so we can monitor it better, the province put us away because it's a 3-county issue. And we need to make sure that if we're going to be accountable, the province needs to belly out more money. It can't be just by the taxpayers, because you're right. We're going to the 401, as you talk about. We're going to Lambton County. We're going to Lakeshore. We're going to all these communities, which is putting pressure on our system, which is expected by our taxpayers to do it. That's just like the infrastructure. When you talk about roads, they downloaded number 2, number 3, Highway 15, County Road 78. They downloaded all that. And meanwhile, when we have the accidents on the 401, where are all those trucks going down? And guess who's paying for that infrastructure? The province needs to start to realize that the issues that we have are mainly caused by them inappropriately transferring powers or authorities to somebody else, which doesn't give the local government the authority. They say that we're on the front line. Well, then let's start being on the front line. The government of Ontario needs to let us start to manage with the appropriate funds that are there. It just finally took us to get 50 cents dollars, and yet we always got to upfront it in order for them to check and balance to make sure that we do it. So when we talk about transparency, we talk about these other things. There's only one solution that I see. And the solution is bring that issue back in-house so we can manage it properly, put the resources where they're needed, and be the spokesperson on behalf of these residents to the province about the whole issue of healthcare and how we make sure that our residents are taken care of.
And an excellent way, and another reason that would reinforce how we need a very healthy and productive and respectful relationship with our local MPPs and our stakeholders at the province. We can have that constructive dialogue when we need to.
I can have that. I always have it with them. We may have a difference of opinion as to their platforms. I mean, but the thing is, I can stand in the Ontario legislature and I can get a standing ovation from all three political parties. When people have personal clashes, but I can talk to any of them about issues that we face with. But sometimes it's about going to the bureaucracy. If you said you worked in the bureaucracy, let's make sure that the bureaucracy understand what's going on, because they're the ones that inform the ministers. Do you think all these ministers and parliamentary secretaries know what the heck's going on? Not a clue. But what they do is we make sure we work with the staff, so the staff transfer the information to the minister. So when the minister gets in front of us, we actually know what we're talking about, and they support the initiative.
And absolutely, usually the MPPs are locally are the first line of defense to talk to those deputy ministers and bureaucrats to make sure that message is received well.
The point here is none of us are experts in EMS. So I've got a hypothesis as well that yes, I think we do a better job running in-house, but that's a big decision. So I'm not going to jump to that conclusion to say, oh, I think I know best. I don't. That's my hypothesis. That's what the committee's going to do. Maybe 3 months into, they're going to say, yes, that is the best service model, and we need to run with that. Those are the experts. Council has done many times where we think we know, we make decisions, but we're not the experts. We need to find solid experts that are going to tell us what the best model is. We need to have best practices.
But mine's not a hypothesis. When before we went out for a contract, the thing was that I had a dialogue with Alan DeViller about what is best in service needed. And unfortunately, council decided to go one way. There was a report just dealing with bringing back in-house, and they supported it. But unfortunately, the elected officials didn't even want to touch it and leave it with a third-party contract. So it's not just me hypothetically, it is actually the way that administration at one time had recommended we bring it back in-house.
Awesome stuff. We're doing good. So we're going to take a quick little break here for 10 minutes, and the universe featuring Ray is going to come on, and then we're going to come back and we're going to be talking about homelessness, drugs in the community, and crime. So stay tuned, hit the share button, and enjoy a Sodbuster or Bayside beer at the bar here. Okay? Talk to you soon.
Yeah.
if you like my tunes and you're watching, hit me up on Facebook, give it a like. Can you hear what I'm saying in there? Can you hear what I'm saying in the mic? Oh, okay. So then I won't worry about it.
Rattling up my cage just for fun, like it was on the mistletoe, keeping us up for days, playing around. Now jump out, and we can dance again. We can dance again. It's okay, babe. You didn't ask for. and get up and feel proud. I knew it was building up a fortress out of misfortunes. There's something sees me, it's getting easier. I've been a piece for you always. Tease me when it's getting easier every day. Was I not wrong? I am still a child. My heart, little of my heart, little of my heart, stuck in the middle, pictures in my head. One's got me, the other's into. Oh, young girl, do what you have no. This is slow, see, come on, this pain down and I'm rooting into
And welcome back to the Dennings Mayoral Roundtable with Randy Hope, Allison Story, and Darren Caniff. And right now we're going to talk about homelessness, crime, and drugs in the community. There's been a lot of talk, and people have a lot of experiences with crime and actually visually seen drugs on the streets in our community, not just in Chatham, but the whole community of Chatham-Kent. So I want to start with Randy. Let's tackle that.
Well, I'm going to break it off in a bit because it's such a complex discussion about the three items. Let's talk about affordable housing. Let's talk about that area first, because if you don't have affordable housing, which usually leads into other tragedies that occur in a family. So when you're dealing with affordable housing, we've been dealing with this for years. I mean, I remember part of the labor movement, the labor cooperative establishment. That's when cooperative housing was in. I was part of a working group that put that together, making sure that persons that are living at a certain means and of income have availability to make sure that they have a good roof over their head, making sure that they have affordable living, and making sure they blend in. So it's not just creating a ghetto situation, but making sure that there's market value rents with other rents that are subsidized. You know, and it's a battle that's been going on for years. I mean, the federal government, the previous federal government, reduced some funding there. I belong to a group with the large urban mayors dealing with this whole issue about, you know, why is it being downloaded to municipalities? Why isn't the federal government upholding its responsibilities to make sure that there's adequate housing for people? You know, that's one area that you got to start with. Then you're starting to go to the homeless. You know, the person that may be suffering mental health issues, maybe suffering just broken marriages, or just the life has just turned right upside down on them. And there's a number of factors. You know, by establishing working groups that are dealing and making sure that you can make sure that all the players are involved, dealing with the person as a whole, because there's a number of factors that lead to certain circumstances. It's not one particular item that does it. So when it comes to housing, it comes to making sure that the affordable housing in there is working with the federal and provincial governments to make sure that monies are transferred in order to make sure that we're building adequate housing and supporting that. And working with our landlords and tenants, landlords in this community, who are providing adequate living accommodations for those individuals. So those two areas, I guess I'll just stop right there, but are part of the discussions that, you know, we've been continuing moving forward, but it's like everything else. You know, you try to get the upper levels of government to understand that there are certain criteria that are needed in communities, and we're not the only ones that's faced with this. Everybody has this issue throughout Ontario and Canada, and that's why through the mayors and the working groups, we've been able to put our pressure on the governments responsible to make sure that they're supporting local initiatives that are happening here.
Basically, what happens when there's dead air, I'm just going to be quiet until somebody else interjects.
Well, I will chime in by saying that Chatham-Kent...
That's how this works.
Chatham-Kent, fortunately, has the one of the lowest rates of violent crime in Ontario, but we've got property crime, which is about the middle of the pack, and I know our police force is really working hard to reduce that, and has been a long time focus of the Chatham-Kent Police Service. But I agree with Randy in that this is not just an issue you can look at in isolation. It's a very complex issue, and we really need the right people around the table to do that. Drug use and abuse happens everywhere, not just in Chatham-Kent, and it's an issue that you need to have not only the police and law enforcement, but also mental health professionals, medical teams, and social services around the table together. Those do not exist in a vacuum. I also see it actually, I've seen it more than I ever have every day the last 6 or 8 months after opening my community campaign office downtown. Every day we have homeless people coming into the office who we give food and we talk to. And I have learned a lot the last several months speaking one-on-one with folks in our downtown who are struggling firsthand. I was also part of a leadership team at the Rotary Club of Chatham that started the Access Open Mind concept, which is a full service, full spectrum mental health service for youth. It's now part of a $25 million research grant through McGill University, and I think this full service, holistic view of how we treat mental health, homelessness, and crime and drug use actually can be adapted to our residents who are of adult age as well, and I would love the opportunity to look into that with a little more detail, because we have to look at the whole picture, not in isolation.
Yes, homelessness, crime and drug issue, it's a big issue in Chatham-Kent, for sure. You look and say, how can we deal with that? How can we look at, we've been doing a lot to deal with it now, like currently the first strategy is one of the things that the police service has come up with. They're working with 22 agencies across Chatham-Kent. That is starting to make inroads, but we need to look at something bigger. London, if you look at London, they have a community mental health addiction strategy, and it takes into account all of the entire community. We need to look at that and saying, what other service do we need to bring forward? What can we do to bring all the resources together to optimize the strategy and what we're looking at here? So we need to look at also, part of that would be anti-drug campaigns. That we look and say, people start on drugs, we can either use law enforcement to beat them into submission, or look at what the root cause is people got on drugs. Because most of the cases of B&E and those things are driven from drug infractions. So we need to go back to the root of the cause and say, how can we first stop them from using drugs? And when they are using it, how can we support them and get them out of that situation? Because as we know now, if we don't do that, if we just rely on law enforcement and we say, force them to move somewhere else, they'll come and push the problem to a different part of the community. So if they go downtown and say, get out of here, they're going to move somewhere else. If they go here, it's just going to move the problem around. We need to deal with the root cause and come up with a strategy that's going to best optimize. Let's go steal from other communities the ideas that they have. There's some great ideas out there. Let's take that and work with that with this committee.
Well, I mean, the important thing is, everybody says, oh, drugs. Drugs have been around for a long time. You just look at it. It's just more evident now. You can see it. I seen the YouTube video today about the gentleman talking about it being, and how he's seen it and how disheartening it is. You're absolutely right. It is disheartening. But there's problems that you have to look at the person in its entirety, not just about the drugs. So Darren indicated about what the police force is doing and working with our agencies and our partners to make sure we're battling it. When it deals with mental health, when you look at the amount of call ratios that are actually just dealing with mental health issues, that's why we called the conference together about private corporations, government agencies. We held it at the Capitol Theater about mental health. Employers need to participate in this too, because if a person is off of mental health, you lose productivity. And when you lose productivity, it costs the bottom line. So that's why we're saying that these issues that we're faced with isn't just about what government can do. It's what private business can do. It's about all of us as a community, because it does spin itself around. It does become more visible in our communities. But I believe there is strategies that are moving forward. It does take time. I traveled the province in 1993 dealing with the whole provincial strategy on drug abuse. And today we're still talking about drug abuse. It just happens to be different drugs that are out there. And I'm petrified of what may be going to occur come October 17th. Because now we've got another piece out there that's maybe contributing to mental health. I don't know the impacts, but we're going to see what's going to happen in our society. But I think the important thing is, Collaboration amongst our business communities, collaboration with social agencies, collaboration with the police department, and making sure that we're talking about a wholesome plan that deals with everybody. Because today a person can be fine, then finds themselves in a situation working in a factory. We've dealt with drug abuse, we've dealt with alcohol abuse in there, and we work with people in its entirety because it could lead to financial situations, it could lead to job stress, it could lead a number of things that pushes a person into that escape area that they're trying to find a sanctuary, and that sanctuary is actually burying them even further. So collaboration is so important in making sure that whatever strategies we come up with and programs that we keep introducing has to involve everybody in order to achieve.
I would add to that that I think one issue that we didn't mention yet is the fact that we've lost 8,500 private sector jobs, and that puts a lot of people in difficult circumstances, as well as putting a lot of strain on our social services. And often when you're struggling, you often have no other choice. You often could lose your home, and the domino effect to that. So we need to really tackle one of the root causes, which is the dramatic loss of job opportunities in this community. And once we start looking at that as well, with the big picture, I think we're going to have a lot more success in tackling those three issues together.
And you both summarized the need for the community mental health addiction strategy. So you talked about details of various things. It's collaboration. It's bringing people together. Let's come up with the best solution for this.
But I'm not going to just say, we lost 8,500 jobs. We have jobs today that are available. I've seen people who work on steady jobs every day and have fell in those traps. This isn't about somebody, just the person who has lost their job or just the person who has went through a separation. These are people that work every day in the factory floor, in an office space, or whatever it is, are suffering from different things. That's why it's the engagement of the employers. Yes, we lost some. Yes, there was a downturn in the economy. But right now, we're back with the lowest unemployment we've had in decades. We're talking about at least 750 job vacancies that are available, which is a wide range from the general labor to the skilled labor. Employers are crying right now for that type of work. But the thing is, when you deal with mental health issues, we've got a number of agencies out there that are doing a great job, but we've got to be able to work with our provincial government to put more resources available. Our caseloads on social services are going down. Our employment opportunities are expanding. Those are positive things, but we've got a situation that we've got to help people get out. Today, more people are being more openly about mental health issues than they've ever been. Because if you were considered to have a mental health issue years ago, they would label you. And so people kept it quiet, kept it closed. Now we're encouraging people to talk more openly, to talk more about the issues so that we can find resolutions to it. And that's the positive part. We can't label people. We've got to make sure that we're a society that embraces, from employers to community to agencies, about how do we lift people up and give them the hand that they're looking for in order to get through that traumatic experience that they may have been through that may have led them to that situation. And that's the point that I think. We can copy somebody from somebody else's community, but the fact of the matter is we are Chatham-Kent. We are a different community with a large geographic landmass, and we can't put one service in one center. We heard about transportation issues and other issues. We've got to make sure that we're portable and making sure that we're dealing with the pressures that are faced from our smallest community to our rural settings to our cities.
We've got a fully serviced, very innovative youth mental health facility right in downtown Chatham that is being modeled and studied literally around the globe. If we have that expertise and experience right here in Chatham-Kent already, let's expand that to address all those issues for the adult population as well.
And with homelessness, they're all interrelated. The homelessness, it's affordable, gets back to affordable housing. We talk about tiny homes. We talk about all these creative solutions. We need to be looking at that. What better than we create a home that costs $50,000 and we can support it and it costs $500 a month? What a wonderful solution for so many people that are homeless or that need affordable housing. We need to be looking at that.
Nobody is going to disagree with tiny housing. The only thing I'm cautioning people, I've been there, I know Alex quite well, who's building them in Wallaceburg. The only thing is, and talk to those who live in the St. Clair Estates and the other trailer parks that are there. Them are like tiny homes. And we will listen to it, it's private owned. The landowner's not taking care of the driveway, the water issues, the flooding that goes on in there. I don't have a problem with it, but we got to make sure that the planning applications that we apply are ones that's going to protect those residents who are in that area, because it's still going to cost the same for connection fees. It's still going to be able to have a gas, a water, and all the other utilities required. But when we talk about tiny homes, let's make sure that we're implementing a strategy, because I mean, I've heard it in Tilbury. You know, somebody built one of those private condominium areas, and it's supposed to be a condominium group, and the condominium group didn't, and their garbage isn't being picked up, and all these things. Those are things, lessons learned. So when we talk about tiny homes, which I don't have a problem talking about, making sure that the planning applications, the responsibilities of the landowner, or is the land actually owned by the person, or is the garbage being picked up, we need to work all those details out prior to implementing.
We certainly do need to work out the details. Proper planning is inherent in anything we should be doing. So we mentioned an idea. The first thing a lot of times people jump to and say, well, what are all the reasons we can't do it? Let's start with what we can do. And certainly there's issues, but let's look at best practices. Let's look at a number of things we can do to make it work.
I think I have spoken to several staff in the municipal housing services who address homelessness on a daily basis. And generally speaking, they don't disagree with the concept of a tiny home, and the reading that I've done as well. But I'm not necessarily convinced at this stage that it's a good option for affordable housing. It's good for folks who often want to live a little more lightly on the environment in a more innovative way, which I totally support. I think that's a really great idea for those who are interested in it, and the planning piece is key. I'm the daughter of a planner, so I would never forget that. But I think generally, I know. Generally speaking, the tiny homes aren't a great fit for families and seniors. And right now, over 50% of people on our waiting list for homelessness.
Tiny homes aren't meant for families, though. That's not what started for.
But a lot of our people on their waiting list for homes and who are currently homeless or struggling are families. So we need to address that root cause first.
And that's where you go back to the federal and provincial government. The CMHC has neglected its responsibility. They've cut funding left and right to municipalities and community groups to put this housing in place so that those families have an ability to do. You know, and that's where I get back to. There's things that we can do, but there's things that the government needs to understand, because everybody finds that, okay, we cut in the province, we cut. And when we find out that we've cut, we've actually hurt and created bigger problems in our community. I agree with you. I mean, I hear about the waiting list. I mean, every day I hear about it. And what's important is to try to get back to the federal government to implement a strategy, a housing strategy that is implemented across Canada, which is supported by the provincial government, which is then executed and implemented by this community. I mean, I look in the community of Ridgetown. We built a beautiful one there. Look what we did near Riverview Gardens. We built a beautiful. It's integrating people. And that's what we've got to keep in mind, that those who want to live in that type of environment can. You're right, the tiny homes may be somebody who wants to downsize from that 2,000 or 3,000 or 1,500 square foot and go down to a smaller one because they want to spend their winters somewhere else. But those are things that you've got to make sure that the planning principles apply, that you've got the services and you've got the enforcement aspects of it. But at the same time, while you're dealing with this critical issue, and we're not the only ones, that the federal and provincial governments have to open their ears and understand that this is the crisis situation, and if you don't resolve this problem happens, that problem happens, and that problem happens. And by doing one simple thing may mitigate a lot of situations that families face.
And tiny homes aren't the only solution. That's a piece of it, but certainly you got to look at a lot of other things that we're doing in the community to eliminate homelessness.
All the more reason to have as many folks around the table discussing that as possible, which you mentioned earlier, Darren, with the mental health professionals, law enforcement, social services, and our MPs and MPPs. They all need to be around the table together to make sure we're tackling it in the right way.
Okay, so we went on to housing, but can we get back to just one little piece here? What can we do? What can we do to get a result to have people that, like Randy, you mentioned the person in the video yesterday, actually seeing somebody with a needle in their arm on a street. So that actually happened. Okay, what step can we take, and how do we get a result to not see that and not have it happen in the streets of Chatham-Kent?
Well, it's gonna happen somewhere, someplace. People are doing it. As long as they're addicted to drugs, they're gonna be doing it. The police can control where it's done. So I followed up with that. I looked at that video and I said I was pretty appalled at the whole concept of that happening. So I followed up, and everything was true to the point. And what happened when they made who here has seen the video? So a lot of people seen the video. So up to the point when they called 911 and they said there was no police service, that was true. 2 minutes later, police showed up on the scene. After 2 minutes, police were sent over to deal with it. They dealt with the issue of using the, I spoke with them and they said, it is certainly a priority of theirs to make sure drug use does not happen in downtown Chatham or any of the downtowns. Let's get out. We don't want youth seeing it. We don't want that. So it's going to happen. So if they push them out of downtown Chatham, they're going to go somewhere else to do it. If they're addicted, we have to, again, going back to the root cause of, we have to have them not using drugs in the first place.
You know, Ben, if I had an answer to that is how do we fix it, I'd be really rich. Because every community is faced with this. And it's an epidemic that's actually plaguing us. And you know, I guess the key would be is working with our agencies who deal with this on a more regular basis. I'm not a professional in substance abuse. I know what it looks like. I've dealt with people who have had it. But I mean, as far as a concrete answer, I mean, Darren touched on it. Are we going to throw them in jail? It doesn't fix the problem. But I think, you know, if that's where it's got to be a Chatham-Kent made solution process, and with our agencies and our police services and others, to sit there and say, how are we combating it and what is our best strategy to deal with it? And I mean, is it going to grow? I'm sure it's going to grow. But how do we make sure that the resources and the available services are there for those residents so they don't fall into the trap? And if they fall into the trap, how are we going to pick them up and help them out? Because it's not about punishment as much as it's about there's a crisis. It occurred. A person has an issue. And how do we take the person, look at the surroundings, and try to find a resolution to it? But Ben, I really don't know off the top of my head what the answer is. That's why today we have the police services working with agencies to come up with constructive ideas, emergency response aspects to it, what service agencies are out there that deal with it, and start to understand the root of situations before we start drawing conclusions. Throwing good monies after bad problems isn't it. It's like, you know, how do we create healthier people? We teach them how to eat healthier. We prevent the health issues from occurring. The same with drug addiction. We need to go back to root causes, understand the basis, and then start to establish a root out of it versus keeping them locked into it and only deal with the symptom and not the whole approach.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a public health nurse or an addiction specialist either, and I wish I had a crystal ball to predict how we could solve this, because it's an issue plaguing so many communities, and like Randy said, it seems to be something different every couple of years or every decade. But I do think we have an opportunity in Chatham-Kent, being such a unique community with such a unique geography. We have innovative practices happening right here in our community that are working with mental health issues. Let's continue that. Let's continue that innovation. Let's continue that creativity, and let's continue that collaboration and communication of everyone around the table. United Way works in this every day. Our mental health professionals, our law enforcement, our general practitioners, our nurses and our docs. We need to have all of them around the table together. We need an innovative solution. We've already got one working with youth mental health. I know we can adapt that to a larger audience.
Okay, and let's wrap this up with crime, okay? I've had my bike stolen twice, 2 bikes stolen twice.
Did you lock it up?
It was outside.
Did you ID it?
It was my fault. I left it outside my front door. Okay. How many people have know somebody that had a bike stolen like me? What can we do about theft? Crime has actually feels like it increased. I don't know the actual stats, but it feels like it, and it feels like it to a lot of people.
Well, theft we have to take in our own hands. A lot of cases, in talking with police, a significant portion of crime happens just people walk door to door, and as soon as they find a door open, that's what happens. They find a car door open, various things like that. We have to empower ourselves to do that. Say, you know what? Let's assume somebody's going to come to our car. Let's lock the door. Let's lock our doors here and there. So a lot of the crime can be averted just doing from an education perspective. We also have to realize that a lot of the crime happens because of the drug addiction. So going back to our discussion earlier, a lot of people are out to feed their habit, and they're looking for easy ways to do it, opening those doors. I know in our neighborhood, we've had neighbors point out and said, there's guys walking around opening doors. He found one that was open, he went in, the neighbor ended up chasing him right into a cruiser down the street. But that's what happens. So we have to educate the public to understand that it's going to happen, but lock your sheds, lock your front doors, those type of things when you're not there.
I mean, I am not a criminal expert, but I do know we have very talented law enforcement. We have very talented people who are already working on this issue. And I agree, it is a very complex issue that has all the links together with drug use and with homelessness. A lot of those are linked together. When you're desperate, you do desperate things. And so we need to look at it all together. Crime is not existing in a vacuum. And violent crime is among the lowest in Ontario and Chatham-Kent, but property crime, we're in the middle of the pack. So there is work to do there, no question. And I think with the right people around the table, being a little bit innovative with that group around the table, I think we can start talking about solutions that are specific to Chatham-Kent and the problems here.
You know, it goes back to complacency. You know, Ben, that's why I asked you, did you lock your bike up? Did you mark your bike, you know, with, you know, the special pens so that if it
The
gets...
police did find the bike, though. It was actually quite amazing 4 months later.
Yeah.
I was
Was it, the
impressed.
same, was it in the same shape?
But I mean, the thing is, and Darren touched on it a bit, is that how many people still leave their keys in the car overnight? How many people leave their front doors unlocked because they don't want to carry their house key around? I mean, I hear that constantly. I know people that do that today. I said, "Where's your car keys?" "Oh, I left them in the car." He said, "Overnight?" "Yeah, I left them in the car overnight." So complacency plays a part of it. Darren's right. They're looking for the quick fix. If your car's left unlocked, you know, one of our habits is every night before bed, and I don't care, we always check to make sure we've locked the vehicles before. You know, how many times have you seen, and we do it, our neighbors have left their garage door open because somebody went to bed early and didn't close the garage door. You know, we've walked over, hit the button, closed the garage door for them. It's about neighborhood watch programs, it's about identification, and it's about taking that little extra time to do a double check. You know, they find the easiest source of B&Es. They don't find the big things to do in order to B&E. And I mean, I feel sorry for some of the people that are getting their trailers stolen and other things. And we've got to combat that issue. We've got to find a way. But the other thing that we're also known for is other people are coming to this community from other communities because it's easier to grab and nab and grab and take off than it is to actually live in a community. So we've got some practices, but we also got good police force that's looking at a lot of this, looking at our crime areas, looking at where some of these things are, going by stats that are there to make sure that we're trying to be either more services in the area or making sure that we're actually increasing our neighborhood watch programs so that people are watching each other's properties.
There's definitely a concern that I have heard. I've been traveling a lot around Chatham-Kent throughout this campaign and knocking on a lot of doors, speaking to a lot of business owners. And there are concerns, especially in the communities outside of Chatham, that there might be some room for improvement in how deployment works with police as well. And I'd love to have that conversation. I know they do studies and they do monitor where crime is occurring in different communities, but I have heard that concern quite strongly in specific communities where they just want to make sure that for that petty crime, for that property crime, they can have a seamless and swift response when it does happen. So as long as we can keep that deployment discussion on the table as well, I think it would be very helpful
And
too.
I found a very interesting stat that 80% of all police calls are for non-criminal activities. So we go back to various things on the mental health. Since when the hospital was closed for the mental health hospital, we released a number of those individuals on the streets, and police are dealing with that on a constant basis. If we can work on some of those other issues, then when we get the calls, we can focus more on those B&Es and focus things. But when 4 or 5 calls are because of various issues that the police really shouldn't be involved with, but because of various situations they're pulled into, we can start dealing with that as well.
When I was younger, I lived on Parkwood Drive, awesome street. I never had a key to the house. Never had a key to my house. You guys were talking about locking up the doors, locking everything. Are we ever going to have a community where I don't have to worry about locking up as much?
No.
Just done?
No, well,
That's just modern day society. That's not a Chatham-Kent thing. I think that's just general sense of security and safety. I'm not sure that's a Chatham-Kent issue that we're facing, but I would love to go back to that. I'm not sure that's probably a reality.
I would love to be able to go back. That if we eliminate the drug problem, which we're not going to do, as long as people are hooked to drugs, they're going to have to feed the habit and do things to do that. So.
Okay then. All right, so that is a wrap for this session, and we're going to come back for another one in about 10 minutes, okay? Thank you very much for watching, and please share. All right, welcome back to the Dennings Mayoral Roundtable, and I have Randy Hope, Allison Story, and Darren Caniff here, and we're going to wrap this up with a little bit different. We're going to just have them talk about what they're passionate about, and again, like always, it's a discussion, so if the other people want to kind of chime in, they can. And we're going to start with Allison. What is most passionate to you? What do you want to talk about? You got it.
Well, I love this community, Ben, and I thank you again for organizing this. It's been a great way for both people in the room and people at home to learn more about the candidates, and I really appreciate that opportunity, and thanks to Darren and Randy for this great conversation. I really appreciate it. Generally speaking, I want to talk a little bit more about my platform. It's my roadmap for what I'd like to achieve the next 4 years if I was elected mayor of Chatham-Kent. And the issues that I've listed on my platform at itstime4ck.com were created after a lot of input and discussion from hundreds of people across our community, talking with them online, in person, and in surveys. And I believe that these 5 pillars can build the foundation for transformational change in Chatham-Kent and specific initiatives that I could implement if elected mayor. And while building my platform, several red flags came up to me relating to our community development that kept popping up. And this includes government statistics that I alluded to earlier about demographics, jobs, and population data. And this data from the federal government of Stats Canada indicated that the past 12 years we've seen a major decline in the number of jobs, a decline in our economy, and a decline in our population. We're now seeing the ripple effects of that decline, which is crumbling infrastructure, higher taxes, school closures, and more. And while we do have a slight bump in our employment rate right now, it's because there's a much smaller number of jobs to be measuring, which I think is a problem. And I believe it's time to turn this around. I think we must take a different path than the one that we're on. We must grow our economy and grow our community. And if we do the first one well, the second one will follow. And so I'm just going to touch briefly on those 5. The first is grow our community with a detailed economic strategy that I have about supporting and focusing on local businesses. It's about representing and supporting all communities in Chatham-Kent, making sure those communities who are not in Chatham have a strong voice, listening and supporting them. I think my behavior and actions during the community campaign have shown that. Third, fourth, and fifth, transparency, accountability, and communication. I think we have a little bit of work to do on all 3 of those, and I would like to make sure that we have that both as mayor and council and with senior administration. I have an issue right now with this report. I'm not sure if you can see this at home, but it's the Ontario Energy Board report about Union Gas. And on page 14, if you want to look it up at home, it's a report about what might happen to Union Gas in the next 5 years with the recent Ontario Energy Board decision. We've had several council meetings since this was released on August 30th, 2018, and there's a message and a recommendation and a decision in this report that I don't think our public is aware of, and I think we need to be aware of it sooner than later. It's talking about what happens to Union Gas in the next 5 years after the amalgamation with Enbridge. So I'd really like to, that's just one example of some improved in communication and transparency and accountability that I would like to see implemented if I was elected mayor of Chatham-Kent. I appreciate all of your support and your discussion. Respectful, constructive discussion is very important to me, and I welcome it for the rest of my campaign. Thank you very much.
All right, let's go. Again, we're discussing here, so who wants to take the floor?
Okay.
Take it.
I want to talk a little about eliminating the barriers to success. You wonder what is that? It involves cultural change. It involves a lot of things. But there's 3 areas. Business. We need to have an open for business sign over Chatham-Kent and mean it. In a lot of cases, that's not the scenario. Some people in this room are well aware of exactly what I'm talking about as far as barriers that we put up as a municipality. It's called red tape. It's called processes that are broken. We need to fix those processes in order for business to prosper. When business prospers in Chatham-Kent, Chatham-Kent prospers. It's a very simple formula. Let business succeed, stand out of their way, and give them what they need as far as administrative support, those type of things, but get rid of the red tape. Individuals, eliminate red tape for them. I've spoke with numerous people across Chatham-Kent that their barrier is red tape, things that are coming up. Constantly, they more and more forms to fill out. I've talked to people that said, you know what, I used to organize this parade. I don't want to do it anymore. Fish fries, a simple thing which brings community together. I don't want to do that anymore because of all the bureaucracy. We need to completely revamp that and look at it and say, we need to encourage people to get involved in the community. That's what Chatham-Kent's about. We can't have less events. We need to have more events in Chatham-Kent. The third piece is more the cultural change that I was talking about. We look at the municipal employees themselves. I believe a vast majority of them want to provide superior service and deal with that. They're slogged with a bunch of processes, various things like that have been 20, 30 years old that we need to revamp. For example, somebody goes in and asks a simple thing at the service desk. Well, I'd love to help you, but I need to go to this person. So they go to this person. That it sits on someone's desk, and 2 months later, they haven't got back. No fault of any individual, but the process itself has created that bureaucracy that it inhibits people from providing the service. We need to revamp that. I talked earlier about I spent the last 20-something years of my career fixing processes. We need to get in and do that. So when we do all that, we create jobs. We're going to create more jobs and we attract people, which are the big issues here. Jobs, the quality jobs, but the key piece is attracting people. We've talked about there's lots of jobs available, but how do we attract those individuals with the skill set to Chatham-Kent? If we do those things right, if we have festivals, we have a lot more things happening. Like the last month was amazing. The IPM, the curling event, all those different things that happen in the event. We need to have that happen on a consistent basis, events across, so we don't have youth saying there's nothing to do in Chatham-Kent. With the right attitude, we can have lots of things to do in Chatham-Kent and attract people. As well, I just wanted that I do have a platform. I'm not going to go into all the details of it. I believe that if you go to darrencaniff.com, the platform is up there. Be happy to read it, and anybody has any questions, please call me. Thank you.
All right, Darren, or Randy, what do you got?
I'm just hoping my wife can clap that loud. Okay. First of all, I'm going to talk about a few things because I think it's important to get the facts on the table. The Ontario Energy Board decision. Union Gas hasn't finalized its position. So how can we decide what's what? There was a team that was put together, direction of council, that we dealt with Union Gas, had meetings with El Monaco, had meetings with senior staff, made sure that we were protecting the jobs in this community through the Union Gas merger between Enbridge. There was an established committee. The important part is, yes, there is a decision, but Union still is reviewing because it wasn't everything that Union Enbridge wanted. That decision will be coming out whenever they make it. We made sure, and there was expertise around the table. I was there in 1992 when West Coast bought Union back then, making sure the head office continued to stay here. So waiting for the decision of Union Enbridge on what they're going to do with the Ontario Energy Board hearing. It's not finalized, but we made sure that Chatham-Kent was at the table, making sure that we were there with intervener status, making sure that the workers in this community, the jobs that were here, were making sure that they were going to maintain and get as much leverage as we can during this. Remember, we didn't have a lot to negotiate, but what we had was the support we've given Union Gas over the years, the way we've mobilized things on the Eastern Pipeline. We've been through this in 1992-93. We've made sure that what we have in there is going to help somewhat protect this community from any significant job losses.
And there was an updated council on Monday night about the topic.
But the thing is so important is that we're waiting for Union Enbridge to make their final decision in El Monaco. Now I want to talk about a few other things because, but it may not be written in there because not everything is written in there. But if I've actually had discussions with Steve Baker about the decision, we made sure our lawyers were there, making sure that the issues that we have as a community are being dealt with. Now we're going to sit and wait because if it doesn't go this decision, it goes the other way, which means that head office. We're not sitting and waiting. We've been at the table. We as council went and put ourselves at the table on an intervener status that made sure that the citizens of this community and the jobs that are here stay here. And if you read the document, you will see that it talks about jobs being in this community and not being departed. That's the important part. Now I'm going to talk about the other things that you talked about, and it's so important. You know, I've listened to the discussions that are here. Everybody has grand ideas, but the important part is getting debt under control, getting our infrastructure in place, making sure that we attract people.
Debt is under control right now.
I know it's under control.
But you said getting debt in control.
Because
it is in control.
we still want to make sure We still want to reduce some more. By the end of this year, we're going to be, instead of 86.4 million, we're going to be at 75 million.
Yes, and that's something
And
the
we've got
council
some
did. The council
initiatives
did a
that-
fine job of
and we've
reducing
got to
debt.
do some initiatives. That was before you even come around,
Well,
Darren.
the last
that
4
those
years, have we
things were
reduced
done.
debt the last 4 years?
The important part is
Have
that
we,
we've been
the last
creating
4 years,
jobs and
reduced debt?
investments in here. We've made sure that the jobs that are brought to this community are filling the factories. There's high-paying jobs that people are having a hard time getting. And we need to make sure we continue that job strategy of bringing people to the community, making sure we're bringing the investments here, because we depend on the industrial and commercial taxation, because we can't always depend on the residential taxation. Then we need to deal with the issue of infrastructure outside roads and bridges. And that's the structure we heard from the young people, whether it be in bike paths, whether it be in arenas, whether it be in other activities that the community feels a value and important part of what we need to do. But these aren't things that you need just the mayor. You got to have the rest of council sitting there and supporting those initiatives that bring them
It's
forward.
called leadership.
And the
That's
thing
what it's
is,
called.
the leadership's been there, Darren.
Has it?
How many times have I seen you fall asleep in council? You want to talk about leadership? I sit there at the head of that table and watch every one of you every night, because I can't be tinkering around or sending out messages. I got to pay attention to the debates that are going on, try to guide the system into a process that a conclusion is made. When you talk about accountability, Allison, I agree. There needs to be more done. We need to make sure that the systems, the electronic systems that we're doing, is easier to access through the fingertips. We will get there, but it just takes time in order to get to those platforms that are needed in order so a person can do in 3. And we've made improvements, but there's more improvements. When we look at efficiencies of service, when we look at the things that we've done in this community, we have made major progress in here. Is there more to do? Absolutely. The small communities that you talk about, it's the community initiatives that make things work. That's why the community groups that have been established, for those who didn't, Bothwell had one, Wheatley had one, Erio didn't have one, Shrewsbury didn't have one. We provoked them, made sure that they got to the committee structure in their own communities of what they need, what is the priorities, to make sure that we as council can support those initiatives that are going on. It's important that council do their jobs. The mayor has the global aspects of dealing with the whole community and making sure that we work from the community perspective, provincial perspective, and federal perspective. I'm just saying to people, it's about debt. It's about infrastructure. It's about jobs. It's about supporting post-secondary education. It's about making a difference here. And through the years of experience I've had, I'm continuing wanting to move that forward so we don't lose track, that the mayor's job becomes a training ground instead of initiative over the next 4 years to keep us moving. And that's where I want to try to drive it, and that's why I'm asking for the support, whether it's electronically, advanced polls, or on the election day. I am asking for people's support. And you want to know more about me? Just go to www.randyhope.ca. You'll see all the platforms, you'll see my experience, and you'll understand where we're trying to bring this community to. Thank you,
Look,
Betty.
I think we all agree. I think the reason that we're sitting up here is that all 3 of us up here tonight believe that they have a vision for Chatham-Kent, and we all want what's best for Chatham-Kent. I think that's why we're up here, sort of putting ourselves out there, putting our families out there with our vision. I think tonight there was probably some clear decisions about and clear differences between all 3 of us and our platforms and our vision for this community, and it's up to you to choose which vision you support. But I think I respect everyone up here and the work they've done to make this community a better place. And I really thank Ben for doing that. We all want what's best for this community, but we might just have a different way to get there. And I thank Ben for allowing us to discuss that tonight.
And I thank you guys for getting the views up on that last little piece. Okay, so we do have one Q&A. A sweet lady came up to me over here, and we didn't have time for it, but she did ask me to ask you guys a question. It might be a long one. Hopefully it doesn't go too long, about OPP and Chatham-Kent Police. Okay, there's always been discussion about that. I did tell her, sure, because she said it so kindly. So,
But you would let that one go, but you
Yeah.
won't let the gentleman in the back
Yeah.
ask his question.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
need to hold,
it's all or nothing.
You need to hold the
Yeah.
balance here.
Yes, all or nothing.
all right, tell you what, here's what I will do.
I know, but I'm just saying, if
Yeah.
rules are rules, then
Yeah.
let's stick to them.
Here's what I'll do. We'll stick with the rules.
Yes, good idea.
Sorry, ma'am. We're not going to answer that question for you. But we're going to ask one more question. I'm going to ask it because I'm right here. Do you guys, can you tell me a little bit about OPP and Chatham-Kent Police? Okay, how about that? Now I'm getting booed. All right. Tell me about the Great Ontario Marathon Trail. Would you agree with turning the rail line that you guys have into a trail? Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes or no? Or
It's not really that.
Okay.
Quite that black and
All right.
white.
Yeah.
So we have
Is this
26.
a personal agenda of yours?
This is
That's
my-
actually being on your show?
yeah.
Yeah. This is my personal agenda, and I want to tell you guys the
you're
Facebook group.
you're taking extra liberties
Yes.
of controlling the microphone.
Absolutely.
Is that
That's
what
exactly
you're
it.
doing?
Well, you took the liberties of making sure everybody knew the rules. I'm going to take liberties into asking you. You guys own 26.2 miles of trail of rail line. And I would like to turn that into the Great Ontario Marathon Trail. And I understand that it's not that simple. Is it possible to turn that rail line into a trail? That is my question. We'll start with Darren.
Yes, it is a possibility, and we need to look at it because there's going to create issues with the farmers. I mean, I would love to have trails. I'd love to have trails connecting all of Chatham-Kent. But there's going to be issues. Farmers are going to say, hang on here, I don't want people going through my fields. We need to look at other communities, how they've done it. There's trails all across the province, how they do that. We need to deal with issues, but yes, I'd like to see it that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that it's a great idea. I think we need more recreational opportunities in a community that always draws more young professionals and families. But I think there's a lot of steps that need to be taken, a lot of discussion with landowners, with the folks who own the properties. We need to make sure it's a clear and transparent process. I would support it, but we need to do a lot of work before we get to that point yet.
Ben, I'm going to say it this way. That, with the support of the public putting me back as the mayor, I'm looking forward to sitting down with you and having that discussion.
Good one. Smooth. All right. So thank you very much. And for watching the Dennings Mayoral candidate roundtable with possibly the future mayors here. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you guys all for watching. And please hit that replay button and share button and like button. And thank you very much.